I'll just sigh.
I got everyone.
No.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Got almost a full house. Great. Thank you, Jen. So we'll get started. First, just wanted to acknowledge, John, with your last board meeting. So thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you over my whole time being here, and then certainly over the last year plus in this position. Excited for you. Thank you for all the support. I think over the last year, we'll talk about the strategic pathways later and your support. And so we wish you well. Know that we'll have some additional time to hang out before you leave, but congrats and thank you for all the support of the board and the organization over time.
It's been a pleasure.
It will be a time to celebrate, right? Not today, but
Correct.
yeah.
Yep.
Forward to that.
Awesome. Okay. So first, public comment. Is there any public comment? No, I think we're good. Okay, great. So let's review consent agenda. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Mary, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. Okay, now we just need to make a motion to move into executive session. I think someone else has to do that, right?
Yes.
Who's gonna do
It
it?
would be only fitting if Jill does it.
I don't have the text in front of me. I do.
Are we on the minutes? No,
What's it? Well, we just approved the consent.
Want me to do it?
Anything?
we did, I'm sorry, I was looking for something. Do we cover last week's minutes?
We can go back to that. Sure.
Yeah.
What's that?
The resolution 25-1, putting me on the checking account. Yeah, oh, okay. Do you have a abstention? It says motion passed unanimously.
You're saying motion passed.
Oh, yeah, I'm just looking at it. I just wanted to make sure.
It passed unanimously, but you abstained, right?
Okay. All right. I'm good.
Would you like an?
No,
update?
I was just, when I read it too quickly, it said unanimously and, okay,
We're good.
thanks.
All right, Maria, you got the text. You want to read it?
Be it resolved that per section 105 of the Public Officers Law, this board shall now move into executive session for purpose of discussing the employment history of a particular person. Attendance at this executive session shall include non-board members, Dawn Armour and Amanda Curry.
We're gonna start with Dawn and then, so if everybody else can give us room.
So that was a motion?
Oh, yeah, we have to. Right, we have to vote.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's second.
Second, and then all approved.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, perfect. Thank you all.
Okay.
I'm gonna go and do this.
Are you coming back?
Then we'll-
Yes.
Oh, good.
How about we-
Everybody's coming.
Okay.
All right, and folks on the Zoom, I'm going to move. Esteban, I'm gonna invite you to a breakout room.
One.
So if you can join that.
With us there too.
Okay, great. There you go. Heidi, Natalie, can you guys hear us? Great, okay, thank you, thanks for holding on, welcome back, everybody. Okay, we have a few resolutions to go through, and then, want to go into discussion on strategic pathways. We've got Heidi and Natalie, here to talk through that. I think obvious, we're gonna go over normal time, so if you can stick around, awesome. If not, thanks for being here for as long as you've been. Great, let's go to resolution. So, first one, 2502, it's a grant, approval for up to $7,000 to purchase, this computer system, designed for early learners.
So moved.
Ed, a
Second.
Thank you, Desiree. Any discussion on this one? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Great. Second resolution is, approving a grant application to CLRC, to go to establishing an educational toy library at Sewell and Hazard Branch. Any second? I think Mary had trying to coax. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Perfect. And then the third one is, so last month, we talked about the patron code of conduct. And so again, the process around it is, we review the policy, and then, we wait a month and then we can vote on it. And so some updates there. So I guess first, we have a motion on that one. Jill, thanks. Second. Thanks. Any discussion, or Dawn, do you just want to go over any of the changes or updates that were made there?
We have. Going to interest of time, but everything in green is something that's newly added to the policy. And more information, we're inviting, welcoming policy from presenting things more from a positive, from a positive stance, and more inclusive in the language. So, no, I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Anyone have any questions or additional concerns? Sure, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm kind of doing double duty. Val, who's our union representative, couldn't make it today. So she would just, the union has some concerns.
Okay.
And we would like to make sure that the bag issue was readdressed. And, even if it could be reworded. And we also have some concerns about calling out that, theft and damage of staff or patron property. So if we could wait to vote until next month, there's some union questions and concerns that we want to have addressed.
Okay, can you be more specific on the places that you're?
So since I have not seen the revised code of conduct, I personally don't. I am playing messenger to make sure that the union concerns
Yep.
get taken,
Okay. Jill, do you have something?
The damage one is the 9th bullet point under prohibited behavior. I'm looking for the one on bag.
It's, well, there's a deleted parts bags, large bags. It's on
I can
the
speak to
second.
the bags, so the addition of the language about the bags and the suitcases was added by the security committee when we did our first round of edits to it after a lot of discussion and referring to the New York Public Libraries Code of Conduct, and there was a lot of discussion around it, and it was taken out in this edit. And I think that that's some of the reason that the union has concerns about it.
Thank you, Becky.
Tim, I request that the, all union concerns be submitted in writing within the next 7 to 10 days to the ED,
Yep.
and that they be, addressed at the next meeting, but that, just so that we have in front of us. We have this, yeah.
Do you want to hold on, would you recommend holding on voting until the next month, or do we want to do it and then we can amend?
Well, I think that would go hand in hand. If we're gonna entertain their concerns, we should hold off, I think.
Okay, well, we could also.
Just a second, please. That was,
There were two, there was,
The cards is over here. And the theft and damage is over here. Cards there,
and so what was the proposal on cards?
that
they're gonna submit them in writing.
that they put it back in.
I'm comfortable, so I think request would be that we get submission. Would also just say that we did consider it last month, and so there could have been time to submit it, so maybe just going forward on policy if there are recommendations, I think.
I'll move that we hold for a week, and entertain any additional union submitted comments for consideration at our next meeting, and just request that the union rep submit them to, the ED within the next 7 to 10 days.
That sound good to you? So now we have to do a second for that. motion.
I would just like to, I think that without Val being here, the union has not been.
Yeah,
I
that's-
don't even.
so we don't have to
copies
discuss.
of it.
So we don't have to discuss anymore, we're gonna hold it, so I think let's just get, let's get the feedback, and so we just need a second, Tim, on Tim's motion. That's right, okay, all in favor there?
Aye.
Okay, so we will hold until next month, but would expect to get feedback from the union, within the next few days. Okay, great, thank you. That gets us through the resolution, so I think we can move on to strategic pathways. How do I want to start this off? Oh, before we do that quickly, Dawn, thank you for moving on so many of the different policies. I think you started out with a list of, I don't know, a lot, and we've made some progress. So appreciate you keeping us on
Well,
board
and
with there.
the top 4 bullet points of 2024, including over 3.3 million items being taken out of the library, 200 kids participated in summer reading. Those are all noteworthy and comes out here, but we blush. It's always hiding.
I will just give the blanket
It would be
statement.
worth, I think, putting something out somewhere because I think it's very noteworthy. And
Good.
and it looks like 2025 is headed in the same direction up there.
I will just give the blanket statement. Thank you again to everybody for doing the pre-reads and board reports. They're all very useful. This month, we're gonna skip over them just to spend time with the strategic plan, but thank you in advance, and I think we'll second Ed's piece that we shouldn't just keep this kind of good information in the notes. If there are ways for us to tell the story, that would be great. Before we get into strategic plan, Jill, did you have something, and then we'll get it.
No, I was, no,
Okay.
I was mistaken, never mind.
Great. So just to, I think, set stage for strategic plan, Sharon had sent out where we are at, with the strategic pathways. You all are already, pretty familiar here, and I think we're just at the place at this point where we'd like to, start putting things in stone as much as possible. There's a lot to talk through. And so want to make sure that we have the time. And so today's really at least the first discussion. When we're ready to vote on it, we should. I think ideally we can, we don't hold on for too long, but want to make sure that everybody's really comfortable here. Brought Heidi and Natalie to the meeting. They've been helpful in helping to facilitate. We'll also just acknowledge all of the staff and board who have been helpful in sort of getting to this point as well. This has been eight months or so of pretty hard work every couple of weeks, getting into it, and then some really heavy deep diving from the staff and figuring out what are actually the next steps. So I think what I'd like to do with the bulk of the time is just go over what it is that we're talking about, and getting any questions answered. They can be high level or, very detailed. But I want to use the bulk of the time there, and then we'll adjourn when ready. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay. I don't totally know the best place to start. I can give the background on how we got to this place, if that's useful. I can also skip over it. We can just get into the details. So let's go back, at the end of 2023, we approved, every 5 years, the public library systems have to have a strategic plan and update. End of 2023, we said it's time to do that. We engaged Heidi and team following an RFP review process, and sort of got into work on sort of how we review in March of 2024. Heidi, and so there was a group of board members, Jill, Mary, Ed, and I attended most of the sessions. And then there was a group of staff, mostly Dawn and her administrative team, that were sort of the core folks. And then we first did a survey. So we did a survey of all staff. And other sort of, so getting staff perspective, both from city and system libraries. And then we also did a public survey. We also did a board survey. All of that information was compiled and really helped us to guide what are the core things that we want to focus on. From a high level, we know that people love the library system. Not a surprise. We have so much that's great here to offer. You read it in the pre-reads, and people love it here. And so the idea around doing more of that good was very clear. So if anything, the concern was not enough people know, and not enough people know how to take advantage. So how do we grow the system? Second thing is there are a lot of issues and a lot of things to kind of focus on. And so then that again goes towards outreach. So how do we get more people to know about the good things to offer? How do we make sure that we're serving the communities that we're based in? For the system as a whole, that's a lot, because we go anywhere from south side of Syracuse to Skaneateles to Northern Onondaga libraries, and all that comes from there, all of the really great parts of the community, all the really challenging parts of the community, and trying to offer services there with libraries that all have their own sort of personality, but then also depend on the services that the system delivers as a whole. And so thinking about how we do that kind of work better. There's absolutely governance work that we need to do internally, both for the board, in partnership with the county and the library itself. And then also in terms of sort of leadership across the board as well. We know for a variety of circumstances, both in and outside of the system's control, that things have been hard. And so thinking about ways to do that, to sort of resolve that is important. And so all of that then came together to having sort of four pathways that we want to focus in on. And then the work really came to Dawn and her team owning individual pathways to come up like, well, what does that actually mean? What are we going to do here? And so where we're at right now is less on a like, do we want to do this exact kind of program tomorrow at this library? And more on how do we think that we want to just prioritize the key things, and where are we going to focus, and also where are we not going to focus, to make sure that we can get those pathways as much as possible. Doesn't all have to happen tomorrow, but ideally over the next several years, we start to make some real progress there. And there's a lot then having to do with like, how do we advocate for funding? How do we build relationships with elected officials? And then also again, how do we have more outreach to the rest of the community? Anyway, that's it. I don't know, other board members or Heidi, anything to add in terms of the background there?
The only thing I would add is that, in addition to the surveys, we did a lot of sort of discovery. There was a lot of work done on understanding current capacity of the library so that you can ensure what needs to happen to grow. But I think a lot of it that I feel really most proud of that Natalie and I did was working with the team. They identified, I think almost 20 people to interview, focus groups. And that information really helped inform these pathways also. I don't want to minimize that.
I totally blanked on that. So that was the process. So again, I think where we're at now is, there's a lot of words in the documents that I want all of us to feel comfortable with and then also be ready to champion. And so I know that there are probably some things that at least we need to clarify, with everybody and get them comfortable or potentially change. So hopefully everybody's taken a look at the document. I guess, I'm happy to say, like, let's take 5 minutes and everybody can read through if that's useful, and we can just sit here for a couple of minutes while everybody reviews. Or if people feel comfortable, again, ideas that we can have some discussion, and Heidi and Natalie can help jump in as well as Dawn and her team. But what's most useful? Or people, is there discussion to be had, and anything that you would like to do, or do you all need a couple of minutes just to orient yourself? Okay, all right, so let's 4:52. Yeah, so let's just take a couple of minutes, everybody read through, and we'll come back. You can go, so again, I think the couple of things here are happy to go sort of line by line through this if people have comments or questions. I think the other thing that I would like to just be clear on is where do we want to go and what do we want to do in terms of voting? There are a bunch of different things that we can do. We could vote on, the core objectives for the strategic pathways. We'll vote for next time, but we're not going to vote on some of the priorities. We could vote on everything, so we can do that in a second. But I think first thing is initial impressions. Any concerns or anything that you're specifically excited about or questions about, open that up for the group.
So, looking through this, there's definitely, some good stuff here. I'm just under the growth service and program. I know we're trying to make sure we hit certain bullet points, but one of the things I don't see, and I could be wrong, because I'm new to things, is how you guys work with non-for-profit agencies about getting the word out. I did see, and I made a note of the school district, but I saw you got it, the, expand outreach piece.
Yeah.
So how you, look at some of these unique partnerships you can have. So one of the things I did bring to the table, or my organization, Jubilee Homes, was planning a job fair. And I said, reach out to the library, it's a central hub, so thanks to the team that helped make that possible, they reached out. So I just want to make sure, because a lot of people don't know that's an option. And, it's so much turnover, that's the problem. So in all these organizations, we can't assume that somebody knows because there's new people there. So I think maybe having some meet and greet type things where you can check the organizations out, they come check us out. So we're learning about each other's things, like each other's services and what we can provide together.
That's great. We had a long conversation last month about the challenges with partnering with the school district for the same issues, just people shift. So noted, I think, so in the pathways and sort of objectives and priorities themselves, I think what we want to be able to do is say, here's a priority, but not be so directive that we enable the executive director and staff to say, we're going to do the job fair, we're going to do the partnership, and maybe we help fund or we help support. But it's a great point. So I guess question for you is there any language that you would like to see in the pathway, the growth services pathway, where it doesn't reflect sort of the priority that we need to be doing more partnership and outreach? But it should, like, it could benefit.
What-
Yeah,
I think there's already language in the next pathway, expand outreach and partnership.
got it, okay. Yeah, the other thing maybe to mention is those two pathways. I think at some point we talked about, like, does it actually make sense to compile them, but there was enough difference that we wanted to keep them separate, but also acknowledge that there may be some things in one that are not in the other, even though you could argue that one is in one place or not the other. But, and again, you don't have to answer this now, but if there is language that you feel like would make sense in there, I think very open to that.
Yeah, I look at it, but I think that could be combined. I don't think it needs to separate, put right now line.
Okay. Other questions from folks? Like an hour-long conversation. Maybe Heidi, if you're there, could you maybe just like walk through high level and make sure that we're sort of thinking about the different pieces of the pathways, to sort of give your perspective on how we've come to these, and just anything else on the different pathways.
Sure, and I just want to say it's difficult to hear. It may just be my laptop, so I didn't really hear it was just brought up. So I hope someone wrote that down because I want to make sure we capture any proposed changes. So as I said, the process was this iterative process with the team. Natalie and I believe firmly that these pathways, and I actually prefer the word pathways and plans, so they're dynamic. That they are owned by the organization, they're not ours. So we worked very hard to ensure that happened throughout the entire process. So again, having a team of board members, you also had a former board, Babette Baker was on it, staff members, I think it was 10 some people. They met every other week for 8 to 10 months. It was a very impressive endeavor. And during that, again, we looked at the surveys, we looked at the capacity assessments, we looked at the interviews, the discovery, had a board retreat, looked at a lot of these things. And what emerged early on, as Sam mentioned, was this idea of sharing and sustaining success. So that there's a lot of people who were like somewhat old school thinking about what libraries were, or a lot of people saying, gee, the library has so much potential to do this. Are they doing it? I'd be like, well, yeah, actually they are, but they didn't know it. So this whole first pathway is really, kind of centers around that idea of expanding the information about the library. And I should stop here and say, by the way, that these pathways are not firewalled off from each other. They're not distinctive from each other. They are all intermingled. I think I picked up that you know, pathway 2 and pathway 3 have a lot of similarity to them, but quite frankly, all of them have touch points with each other. So you need to bear that in mind throughout. So it's not just any one thing, it's everything altogether. So, but I think there's a deliberate reason why this is the first pathway, that to share and sustain success. And that covers everything from community awareness to evaluating programs, to ensuring that people in the community know about them and can get in to see them. And that you guys are around on a long enough basis to have that sustainable financial success for a financial future. The second one, growing services and programs. And again, I think Jill had heard a little bit, Jill had mentioned that there was reasons why we had wound up not separating them out. This is where we focused a lot on literacy, on the importance of literacy, the role the library plays. One of the things we came to conclusion on was that literacy, it's not the library's job to provide the literacy services so much as to make sure that the library literacy activities are in line with and are integrated with the existing programs that might be in the community. So it's a little bit about how you define services, I think. This also looked about physical spaces. The next one was expanding outreach and partnerships, and that's where we really talked about, you've got a lot of opportunities with new corporations coming into town, how to tie in with that. We heard that there were parts of our community that aren't aware really that the library is available to them, whether that's a language barrier or a cultural barrier. So that's making sure people have understanding of that. Partnering with groups like people who work with people who have maybe particular learning disabilities. The library has a rich opportunity for that. And really connecting back in with the patrons as well, to make sure that you're listening to them. And then finally, bolstering leadership. That's where he came in to making sure the board is as strong as it can be. Everything we heard from the day one and every single thing we heard affirmed this, that you have an extraordinary staff and they're one of your major strengths. And so how do you keep that staff sustained, retained? And so these are some of the things that came up about that they have, you know, the ability to innovate themselves about stuff. You've had some turnover in leadership. So it was acknowledging that and making sure the staff is kind of feeling on board with future directions and things of that nature. So that was a kind of a very rapid breeze through with a lot more information in the document there that I just quickly summarized. Is that what you wanted, Sam?
Okay, yeah, and then maybe Dawn or team, and anything else that we haven't covered already that you'd want to call out?
What I really want to call out at this moment is that these pathways, once they're agreed upon, will inform where we go forward, all the way from partnerships, programs, policy creation. So I think it's very important when they're adopting, when we adopt this, that we follow through with that. It's very easy along the way, kind of lose track with that. And when we talk about accessibility, we're talking about accessibility in a very broad sense.
Yep. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions?
Related to, I was gonna ask how you see us putting it to work after we pass it, presuming.
Yep.
All goes well.
Yeah, I mean, well, one, I'm excited to get thoughts from staff on how and where they can action. I think the key, well, outside of the stuff that's directed directly at us in terms of getting house in order from a governance perspective, I think there's opportunity for us to be more strategic on how we use trustee funds to help pilot programs that then we can make a better argument to the county or state representatives whomever to help fund in a more, long-term way. And today we fund great things, but it's not super strategic. I think also on enabling more conversations with Focal about how we can partner and where our priorities are so that they can better fundraise also is absolutely something I think that we can help with. And then the outreach, I mean, I'm sure for the reason why Desiree mentioned what he did is because he has connection to existing organizations, and as do many of us. Last month, we talked about Mary's connections to the school district and how we can better leverage, obviously, your connections to elected officials. So I find our ability to help support and fund exciting programs that folks want to do that we can work with the executive director on supporting. And then also advocating and connecting in ways are probably two of the core things. But I mean, open to your thoughts as well, but.
If I could just add one thing I forgot to mention, this is a living document. So there might be things you might check off, but it really has got to be something you visit constantly and you think about, and something may change, it may change, and that means it's a good thing if it changes because you're paying attention.
To add that, going through this process was, really valuable, but one of the things I think, at least I personally discovered along the way in the library world, we engage in a lot of planning, but planning is different than strategizing. And so, I think we need to be mindful of that. We're big planners in the library world. We like to plan it, but strategizing is different.
For executing it.
Yeah, I do think that that's a place where in coming months, once ideally we've approved it, I think having very regular reviews on what it's going to look like and talking about those things and getting more clear presentation on, we did this thing, it was good, or we did this thing that it was not good, or we did this thing that we thought it was going to do this and actually did this, will be helpful. Again, because maybe we can help to support, or I think it just keeps everybody open on, that we actually are making progress and it's not just a document that lives on a shelf somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to follow up on execution.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use an example because I'm assuming we're moving towards adopting this as our.
You're gonna help me on that one, but yes.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what we're moving toward. We talked
Yeah.
about the timing.
Yeah.
And I'm really following on, somebody mentioned, Dawn maybe mentioned the execution. So this is from my perspective after a couple of years. Bless you. And I'm on Pathway, Grow Services, Innovate Current Spaces, Evaluate Community Rooms, and then we had the priorities. I just want to put this in the context of my perspective after a few years on this one as an example on execution. So I have thought about, and we were presented with the Pettit project update and the problems with that would fit directly from my view, directly here. And Mary, for the new people's benefit, there was a proposal on the table to fund a construction of a community room at the Pettit branch over in Westcott Nation. And bid went out and it came in way over budget. That, to my understanding, is totally stalled. Right? This would be,
Well,
so
Don can give me that.
Well,
Some more work did.
my
actually was
perspective, Ed, I'm not saying it.
Well, it was another attempt to bid it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, over.
It came in over, and so I would say at this juncture it's stalled. That's just my perspective.
Oh, I agree.
Okay, so the question is, how in this broad context of this plan development and identification of objectives, do we get to execution? That's one from this board. That's just an example of my perspective. What does that look like? How do we go beyond deliberation and become effective in whatever it takes within reason. Or maybe not. If that is our objective, to see it through. Do you follow? I mean,
I do.
that's-
I think one of the things Jill has mentioned a few times, and I agree with is, we kind of have to know what's out there already, so we should map where our current, library availability is and what that looks like from a physical perspective and how that maps to the, community as a whole. You know, the buildings have been there for a long time and populations have changed. And so getting a sense for where are the buildings, what's available there, I think gets us on the same page
Yeah.
about where things, I understand.
And I'm just saying, we've identified that in one context. And how do we, that's a broad assessment, I got that. This is one specific where the director gave us a presentation.
Mhm.
Ed's been very helpful in informing us of the hurdles, and they're significant, financial. How do we as a board effectuate that and overcome those, and rather than just discuss this and
sure.
formulate it, right? I'm
I agree.
kind of
So,
floundering on what are the implementation devices that we are going to adopt as part of this process at the culmination of plan.
So I'll be careful because I think ultimately it's on the executive director to bring us the
Okay.
needs. But what I would suggest is that, again, if we have the data on where the stuff is and where we think it needs improvement, I would venture to guess that the entire board can't make the argument for why the PEDIC project needs to go forward. And that's not because it shouldn't go forward, it's just because we aren't all on the same page about exactly what it is that needs to happen. We have the sense on what where is the information that helps to get us on the same page. It should be clear on where the priorities are. Now, if it hits walls because there are funding gaps, part of what the plan calls out is there is a need to better communicate with elected officials, to better tell the story of the library, which, I think we do a lot today. I think there's a lot more that we could do strategically, especially if we can map it back to the plan overall. And sometimes things won't go through because they just won't go through, but hopefully there will be more of a plan. I think also we can be more clear in every meeting, like, let's get an update there just to sort of force the issue and make sure that we've got things coming up. We have Sydney Johnson joining us. Thank you. And I think just staying in even better touch with the county executive's office on where the priorities are and making sure that we're sort of in lockstep there will be really helpful. So anyway, that's not like I'm not going to make the project plan because I don't think that that's our job to do, but I do think that we can play a forcing mechanism on making sure that there's steps in progress.
I think this calls out that facilities is important to the library's future, and gives us, because we've put it in our strategic pathway, gives us something to point to as we're gathering data, making the point, talking to people. Most library buildings are like over 60 years old, starting to put in, really creating a story that goes with that objective.
What's that sound to you? You seem skeptical.
We have at least one other branch report that sat on the shelf for how many years? White report, which. And I don't know how valid it is right now, but
I think the difference with this one, and I'm really glad you brought this up, Tim, is that was a state construction grant project. Like, the state gives you a certain time, and I don't have my paperwork in front of me, but I want to say we have either a year and a half or 2.5 years, and we have to spend that money for a petted community room, whatever that looks like. So you are right, like, we need to do this now. Like, because the time is short, so I
Yeah,
appreciate
and,
that you
and
brought that up.
there are, and there are hurdles, and really what I'm actually somewhat within the boundaries of the format of this process, is saying, what's the board's ability, role, function, objective? I mean, I'm not advocating that we pick and we we put on and micromanage a project a month on our agenda. But on the other hand, this fits into what we're, the overall, and I get it. Across the board inventory prioritization, but on the other hand, this is one very specific one, that if we're going to be effective. That what contribution can we make? To see that through, because it in turn fits into a lot of the more general. Stuff that's in this
I do think
pathways.
on the big stuff. Like, we should get more clear reports and have more discussion on, okay, well, where is the progress, what do we need to do on, go on block things,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
pull the board in.
This will be the first time since I've been on the board. 7, 8 years, however long it's been, that we've had a strategic plan. And so just having this in writing, so that we're all like moving in the same direction, I think that does a world of good. And I know that doesn't answer your question.
No,
but-
that's
but-
fair.
But it's, but we haven't had that convergence of this is the path, this is the path we're going down.
And just let me give you another example, because and I'll repeat it from last week a little bit. Is it the kind of thing that we're looking at? With a change of our staffing leadership. But the handoff, thank you've done. No, seriously. But do we want to ask staff, bring in somebody from the school district? I mean, to the board, so that we can propose, we want to establish a formal relationship with you. How do we go about that? I mean, are those? I mean, if any of you have ever had the experience of working with the military, the Corps in particular, it's the, the after action items that have to be followed through, right? And are we gonna take that other step forward? Is that the?
I
So-
think where it makes sense too, I
I
mean,
mean, I'm just using that as another
Yeah.
example.
I do think that it's important for us to make sure that we don't overstep. But I think that we can absolutely play a role of convener and like, this is our plan.
Yeah,
And
I'm not
do
saying that we
I-
formulated an agreement or anything,
Yeah.
but what we put out, invite somebody and say, that's what we want to do with you, right? Is that doable? And then we hand it off, obviously, for staff to execute, but
I
that's,
think that sounds great.
Or vice versa, I mean, the staff could make the relationship and bring it to the executive director,
Yeah.
so
but I think,
it's really, even though we adopt it. It's a plan for the entire organization. So everyone should be, as I'm gonna say, everyone should be working on these pathways going forward. Which kind of sounds very grand, but it's not just ours, it's everyone's.
and I will just sum up and conclude by saying that I'm very much in favor of a tail end execution kind of thought process. So that we have some,
Accountability.
yeah,
Yeah, so I think that this is like roadmap, right?
right,
And so with each department, they take pieces of this roadmap and they develop plans, and it's incorporating your job description, your budget. Where are you gonna go, what grants you're gonna apply for, and that's how you move. And then you always be constantly updating and saying, all right, did it meet this pathway? Did it do this? You're always referring it, so it doesn't just sit in a book.
Yeah.
So-
And I think that goes to some like pre-reads, I would imagine, might change, right? It's like, can we have that more shifted to some of the specific priorities? So, yeah. Mary.
Having that be the specific focus of the regular review and the role of the director, bringing to us, is we have it in a report right now, things needed by the board.
Yeah.
And so we're,
And to be clear, I think from my perspective, from the board, there are, I asked for, like, put things into the pre-reads that are asked for the board. We have not been clear on like, what does that even mean and what do we have to offer? And so I think that's part of this too. We don't have $10 million, say, go do whatever you want, but we also have more than $5 or just time and experience to give, right? And so I think there's a balance there. And so I think we can also do some work there to be clear on, and to your point, how do we help execute? Because it might be, yeah, the next similar Petit room, maybe it's that we're helping to fund the study here. I don't know, like, whatever the thing is, but that helps to make the pitch for now we can get the grant for the money that actually covers the bid. So I think that there's steps there, but there's absolutely things that we can do as a board to help support or push.
You also, Vocal gave us money, right, for this grant. And so, or to do the strategic plan, and so we want to make sure we say to Vocal, we did all this and this are the outcomes, so, you know, that's also important.
Well, and also, hey, we might need more, right? Like, so how do we support that? So, yeah, I think that's right. Okay, other thoughts, comments? I think it's a good one though, Tim. I do not want to get to a point where we're like 5 years from now, we didn't do anything, so I think we should figure that out. Becky, yeah.
I just think maybe one concrete action step, so if you guys review the grants and do the resolutions for the grants on every agenda, maybe tie it into a specific pathway. Say this grant advances this pathway. So you
Yeah,
say, okay,
I love
that's
that.
cool, you know,
Yeah.
CLRC, that's literacy, boom. And then you can kind of move forward with confidence that, you know, it's advancing what we have outlined as the priorities for the
Yeah, like, for example, expand outreach and partnerships. I'm already working with Office for Aging at the libraries. We're having this evidence-based program is going throughout all the different parts of libraries and just really connecting. And then you're gonna go on TV and, you know,
Yeah, we're gonna have, one of your people talk about the program, right? It should be on the next, maybe 3-4 weeks. And that helps build people for the hazard and the, classes that will be coming up.
I'm constantly pushing the library and all this has to go to the library. Go to the library.
And it gives us a shared language.
Yeah.
to use.
Yeah.
I think on the other side of that, Becky, the might be that we say that seems like a really nice grant. There's nothing to do
Right.
with what we're talking about and will distract resources. Is that really what we want
Exactly.
to prioritize? Maybe the answer is
This
yes, but I
grant
think we
for
have a.
toothbrushes, you know, you're like,
Sure.
oh man, okay, it's between the grant for toothbrushes and the grant for books.
Absolutely.
Literacy is a priority. We're going.
That's what we asked, right? We asked
Don't go there.
Toothbrushes are important, but-
Yeah, but so, yes, I think that's there. Okay, anything else that we want to discuss here? I do want to spend a couple of minutes.
Like I was
talking
gonna
about
say,
that. Yeah,
what I'm very positive about is references to literacy.
Yep.
References to connections like a school district, and we've already made a bit of a starting connection with them. And a lot of other organizations that are out there that, because as a library, we're not reading teachers, but if people don't read, you know, it's the future of libraries it's not very positive. And so it's what I mentioned at another prior board meeting is there are a lot of libraries working on early school readiness, early literacy, adult literacy. And so I'm excited because I think we're going in that direction with the strategic plan.
yeah,
I just want to say that, I have no idea how many meetings and hours we spent, on this plan, that we all didn't agree. And I think that's probably important to know that, there were some interesting online and offline conversations where, it's like, why isn't this in the plan, or why is that in the plan? And so after all those hours to come up with something that we agree on is really powerful. And part of the power of doing a strategic plan is the conversations. And so, thanks
and
for
we all
everyone.
still mostly like each other.
Yeah, I don't know about you.
Okay. So in terms of next steps here, if it feels like we're in good shape, what I'd love to be able to do is put this on the agenda for next month for us to officially adopt. You all should go and read and make comments. We can consider them. I don't want to have it sit for too much longer unless we have to, because I think, like, let's get to work already. But if there's more things that are serious to cover, then we should do that, and I don't want to push it. So
What format will it be presented?
Yes,
What format will it be?
in terms of what we.
That's-
vote,
the answer is yes, all the formats.
Phil is giving you a hard time. Are you asking what we
No.
would vote on?
Well, no, what's it gonna, I mean, is it gonna be these tables? Is that what we're gonna vote on, I mean, that's what we're gonna call it? These tables are gonna be the plan?
Yeah, I mean, Heidi, if you can opine as well, that would be helpful, but I think what we want to prioritize is certainly the pathways broadly and the objectives. And then potentially, yeah, what is in the table, and that's kind of how we prioritize.
But also, I said yes, because I think one of the things Heidi has said, is that there will be different versions for different audiences. So we'll have a plan that is this. We'll have a plan version that's prettier. We'll have a plan version that's shorter. There's actually a version that's.
I wanna vote on the
actually
pretty one.
a lot-
Okay, are
Give
you
me-
gonna
give me
authorize
marker.
money to get the?
I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I'm, no, and kidding aside. We're gonna get something to vote on.
Yeah.
It's gonna
and
be a
this I
document.
think would be the objectives and priorities with the pathway. So what we have in the tables is really where, that's the core, that's like the meat of the conversation. I don't want to get too more detailed because I think that gets into some of the micromanagement, but I also want to be detailed enough that it doesn't just feel like, what does this even mean? But if there are thoughts on
I-
what would look good, then happy to. hear.
Yeah, I would request that we don't just get it within the week before the board meeting.
Well,
The,
yeah,
the document we wanna vote on.
Yep.
Because
for sure.
I'm just curious what it's gonna look like. Is it going to?
I mean, I think that this is pretty close.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, unless there's a big difference, I think this is pretty
all
close.
right, and the reason I'm asking is that would there gonna be narrative introductions or any of, you're shaking your head now,
I
okay,
don't think so.
okay, all right, no,
I think for future, if there's, more sort of marketing of the specific things, we can add the narrative, but I don't think that the board needs to approve that piece of it. If anything, I would say that's on the staff to sort of interpret and put in, you know, if there's board reviewer input there, then great.
I also think it's important to note that this document, was a, culmination of a lot of conversations, as Jill said. But this particular document was generated by, the staff at a fairly deep level, not just sort of the leadership team on the staff. They worked with their individual people in their teams and dug deep on it. So I think it's very authentic in that respect. Obviously, you guys have to make it look the way you want it to look like comfortably in terms of presenting it to the public and having it in hand. If you have to go talk to the powers that be, that's what you guys have to decide. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that how hard the staff, not just how hard, but to what degree they felt the ability and were empowered by the team to weigh in themselves on a quite at a great level of detail. I mean, Dawn, you and I've talked about it. I don't know if you want to add something to this effect too, but
I think, Tim, what you're referring to is maybe.
yeah,
something
yeah,
like
exactly, yeah.
I think what Tim is saying is that the board would be voting on what's behind this. In other words, how it's presented, was like a design thing or
Yeah,
whatever.
I am.
But you're voting on the pathways and those parts of the
Concept
plan,
design.
right? And then we have another document similar, but it's broken down more that staff are using where there are actual real staff members tagged and assigned to the different objectives and priorities. But that is more the work that we do in the library. It wouldn't be, I don't think the public needs to know that librarian A or B is working on it.
Yeah. Yeah,
And the different libraries would have to also have the same roadmap, right?
City library.
City library.
And then it will be a guide for
Not
the library.
the members.
you're right, Don, that the other management plan processes that I've been involved in involved a culmination with more of a show and tell
Exactly.
kind of, and that's, with the slideshow and the bullets and the,
Exactly.
and the headings and all that, so that's.
The color.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's what I was sort of wondering about,
Right.
yeah. And what the production values are here,
And on the website, right?
And on the website. right?
yeah.
So we'll get that out immediately to everybody, and I think if there's comments, desired changes, whatever, let's get those in as soon as possible, and then we can ideally be ready to vote on it next month. And if folks have ideas, thoughts on any of the things that you've talked about in terms of rollout plan, in terms of execution, all that stuff, I'm very happy to come up with all the different plans. To also would love any feedback as well. So y'all can give me whatever information you would like there, and happy to incorporate, distribute.
You can put it in chat.
Put in, yes, so this of AI, right, the whole thing for us. Great. Anything else? Ed, you've always got something before. we close out.
He just wants to go to his party.
Okay.
All right, I'll do I just have a small notice, but it's
Yeah.
important. New York State Ed, changed ESL to ELL, English language learners versus English as a second language. So that's an important distinction. So it's
Okay,
English language learners, yeah.
great.
Heidi, did you hear that? Okay.
Perfect. Okay,
They haven't mandated sense of reading yet, but they changed those. a couple of-
you gotta adjourn before you
Right.
get into this.
Oh, yeah, no, because, yes, you better now.
Is there a motion to adjourn, Jill, second? Is there a second?
Oh, I thought.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect, thank you, everybody, thanks. for
I'm not
the
gonna
fun
get
on the call.
I think
That,
that getting into those weeds is not a good idea.
Get dinner.
or at least, yeah, having that.